Good morning, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. It looks like a few people are still trickling in from the waiting room, but we'll go ahead and get started. My name's Randy Ford. I'm the Vice President of Programming at ACN. Thank you for being here for today's Flash webinar. This is our series of quick half-hour sessions on some of the topics that we know are on lots of people's minds these days. So later we'll talk about some of the upcoming events that you can be part of, Flash webinars, and some other exciting events that we'll get to a little bit later. But I want to jump right to today's topic, which is Beyond Digital, Harnessing the Human Experience to Drive Growth, Even If You're Remote. And I'm excited to introduce our speaker today, Kim Brown. She's the founder and CEO of Centrally Human. It's a professional development and training firm focused on innovation and inclusion. She's all of these things: a motivational speaker, author, former CMO and growth executive, journalist, certified business coach, and mom. And all of her social media, you can find her at Centrally Human. So Kim, it's yours. If anybody has questions, I will say this: if anybody has questions, Kim has said that we can answer those as we go. If you have questions, drop them in the chat or drop it to me, and I'll throw them out while Kim's talking. Otherwise, Kim, it's all yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Randy. Hi, everyone. And it's awesome to be here. Thank you so much. And just so everyone knows, we're going to be sending out a follow-up with some of this information documented. So while you can take notes or listen and think about as we share, we'll also be sending a follow-up. So you will get a copy as well. And I have my chat box open as well as Randy. So we'll be kind of looking at things coming through, and the idea is this is a really fun, 25-minute conversation. So with that, thank you so much for the introduction. I am a new member of ACN, and I'm so happy to be here. It's really incredible. What I wanted to talk about today and share is how to get beyond digital and harnessing the human experience to drive growth. Ironically, now that we're in kind of a pandemic era or a very virtual workforce era, the idea of getting beyond digital is somewhat of an oxymoron because we're more digital than ever. And yet we really realize the power of human connection and the power of our human spirit and our ingenuity. And so first, I just wanted to talk through an experience that we're all feeling, that businesses are being impacted by, either yourself as consultants or if we have any nonprofits on the phone. And it's this idea of the human-centric shift. So, the early 2000s, the Internet 2.0 started blossoming, meaning that content could be shared back and forth from the publishers as well as the audience, you and I, in a way that we had never seen before. Back in 2007, when Google acquired YouTube, was the first time we could actually put videos on the internet in a scalable way that was more user-generated. Before that, it was really difficult to. And I like to call, early 2000s, 2003, 2004, up through about 2015, the digital-centric era, the digital-first era. We got smartphones and we built apps and we, started acquiring CRM technologies and hiring digital people and looking at analytics, and data exploded. The amount of data we can collect just exponentially exploded. And we did what we had to do to understand and kind of walk our way through and feel our way through what this digital technology was and how do we use it. And we did see a lot of businesses grow as they got websites and mobile apps and joined social media and really connected with users in this digital space. And then there started to be a shift. And if you don't have it articulated, you felt it. And I think, Centrally Human started 5 years ago when we were one of the first ones to talk about the human-centric shift and develop a framework for it. And now you can see everyone is talking about humanity and the power of humans and connecting with people. So to unpack that, it really is called the human-centric shift. And it's for a lot of different reasons. The coming on the other side of the 2008 recession, the expansion of digital technology, the literacy of individuals who understood digital, and also the most powerful thing, we adopted digital because we thought it was going to bring us closer together than ever before. I remember sitting in rooms doing strategy planning with companies and us going, we're going to know our customer better than we've ever known them. And yet here we are with more questions, more data to sift through, and more fog than ever before. So digital wasn't the answer. Technology wasn't the answer. It's a tool to help people connect. And so now we're in the human-centric era. We're going through this human-centric shift. And it's a drive for authenticity. It's a push for simplicity and transparency. And so those are the big three elements that categorize this era that we live in: simplicity, authenticity, and transparency. The idea that we want real human connection, and we're flipping the script, and it's digital with a purpose. It's technology for a purpose to facilitate human connection. It's great that we have Zoom. We're using it to talk to each other. We're not just buying it and going, ooh, great shiny object, let's have webinars for the sake of webinars. We're actually having conversations to help people do better as teams and individuals. So this is an example of trying to be a part of something more meaningful than just buying or acquiring technology for the sake of it. What's interesting for companies, whether you're an independent contractor, a sole proprietor, small business owner, a large nonprofit, companies, even if you're a nonprofit, are not human. They're an entity. And yet now more than ever, that soul is really important, because people are making decisions about either donating money, supporting some of your fellows, doing business with you, based more than ever on this idea of your humanity as an individual and as a brand. And so what we're going to talk through today, I'm going to share my 6 tips on how you can take advantage of this human-centric era, which is hard, but not impossible, especially now that we're all remote and using technology more than ever before. So how do we transcend digital and actually become more human, more connected, and more successful than we had even last year? And that isn't a pipe dream, and it's not a big gimmicky, here are 6 tips to get what you want. But these are tactics that I've used over the last 5 years with my business and my clients. And they work in big Fortune 100s, they work for nonprofits, they work for startups, and they work for small business owners as well. So I'm excited to share them with you. And if you have any questions, again, we have the chat box up, so feel free to, make a challenge statement, ask questions, bring your own personal experience into this. So the first tip is finding your brand soul. What is your purpose and reason for existing? It's interesting because nonprofits have such a leg up on their soul, because they're truly mission-based. They weren't necessarily started like an insurance company to make money. And yet sometimes that gets lost in the hierarchy and the bureaucracy of running a different type of organization. Because we all do need to make money. And there are so many companies at a variety, for-profit, non-for-profit, B Corps, community organizations. There's so many things out there that can cloud why you exist. So step 1 is finding your brand soul. Go back to your origination statement. Go back to your mission statement. Does it make sense? Why was your company born? Why was your organization born? And why is it important that it exists in 10 years? And if you're not really, really sure of what that is, that's step 1. Because that's essentially you bringing a soul into a business entity. And yes, a lot of the people that we work with are foundations or nonprofits, but they can feel just as soulless to a customer if you're asking them for money. And if you're not really talking about the people that you serve or your reason for existing. So for the general public, although it's very important to have organizations that do social good and are mission-based, it's really important that the people in that organization remember why it exists and why it's there beyond just a paycheck. And so step 1 is to find your brand soul. Why do you exist? Why were you born? Why was this company born? Why is it important? And why is it critical that it lives for the next 10 years? And why you, aside from somebody else that might compete with or complement you in the same space? What's your reason for existing? And then communicate that with your teams. Everyone's going to have a different reason. So one activity could be to crowdsource it. Get on a Zoom call, send out a survey and say, if you had to explain to someone who this brand is, What would that look like? Don't just regurgitate a mission statement that they were told to memorize. What does it actually look like? You're going to see a variety of different answers of how it is today and how it can grow into the future. And it's really important to understand those variety of perspectives from your team and get everyone motivated to that core vision and soul of the brand. Especially now that we're more remote, it's critical because so many people find value in the purpose of the existence to ground people in that and remind them of that and have them be a part of that conversation. So number 2, planning for your future. Everyone talks about what is this going to look like and what are the unknowns and what's going to happen next. And interestingly enough, I was actually having some conversations with some senior managers, and they were starting to say, you know, I like this. I don't want it to go back to normal 100%. So as we kind of look down a very dark tunnel that we know there's a light at the end of, start planning for the future. So ask yourself and your team to keep track of what you're liking and what you're not liking during this time. It's really important to do that work now, because if there's an announcement June 1st that we found a vaccine and everything's opening back up, there's going to be another wave of anxiety and panic that we're going to lose all the good things that we learned, and we're going to lose the balance that we finally struck, and we're going to have to go back into a setting that wasn't 100% right. So to help people find that control and that ownership, start asking yourself and your team to keep track, and your clients, keep track of what you like right now and what you don't like right now, because we actually have the power to architect the future. And step 1 is making notes in real time about what you like and don't like. So when there is an announcement of the beginning of a reopening, you can revisit that and say, okay, we're in control of this. What do we want to pull through? What changes do we want to make? The second thing to do is start playing war games for your business. So get real with worst case scenarios. You know, in the military world, they have experts that go around and play war games. What would happen if this? What would happen if that? And they get pretty real with those scenarios, and they exercise their imagination muscles, and they exercise their communication skills, and they exercise the irrationality of this world. And if you haven't done that for your business or for your client's business, start planning war games. What happens if this is what it looks like for 2 years? What happens if it opens up next week? What happens if, you know, bailout funds go south and no one get, you know, all the airlines lose their funding and the oil and gas industry loses their funding? What happens if we actually secure a massive foundation partner? Walk through that and understand how you're going to pivot and react. You won't have all the examples, but it'll stretch your imagination. You'll actually have to start planning for the future. And that's a habit that the most successful organizations go through. And so it's good for your business. It's good for your client's business. There are structures in place for how to do that, but starting to do war games is just as important as building a strategy. And then finally, as you're looking at your business planning 2.0, one of the traps that I think a lot of companies are going to fall into, regardless of for-profit, non-for-profit, B Corps, whatever it looks like, is starting to think that they can replace people with technology. And the reason that's short-sighted is because technology is actually very expensive, and it changes the people that you have to hire, which tend to actually cost more money. And so I would also start doing real cost analysis for automating certain workflows and potentially upskilling or doing internal recruiting to replace other individuals that you might have to get rid of. And not looking at technology as the bright, shiny solution for saving money, because it can be just as expensive or more expensive when you factor in the higher salaries of the people that have to maintain that technical infrastructure, whether it's software or hardware, the implementation, the upkeep, and then the brand image. What's it going to look like if you do that? Is that going to have an impact on your KPIs and the customer experience when we remove people? We're already seeing a shift of a demand for the last 5+ years on wanting call centers in the United States just so we could talk to someone that feels familiar to us. We're already seeing a supply chain that has identified decentralization. So if something happens in one city, we're not completely screwed. So start looking and doing real cost analysis when you're thinking about automating through technology, because if you do the work on paper, sometimes it actually is more expensive than investing in your individuals. So number 3, architect your intersections. It's really important to think about the new normal that this could look like coming on the other side. Consumers are going to have a different experience with psychological safety. So even if cities start reopening, a lot of people won't feel comfortable engaging in the same way they did before. So start mapping your experience in all these channels. What does your experience for your customers, your stakeholders, your client look like in real life, right? Is it meetings in a building? Is it an event? And what does it look like virtually? What does it look like digitally? If you don't have an experience that fits for that channel, I would highly recommend you start building out a revenue stream or a partnership to start being able to operate as much virtually as you do in real life, and start working towards those, because the reality is you've got to diversify your experience across every channel: telephone, internet, passive, active, right? Social media where you're pushing things out, communication channels like a Zoom, in real life events that maybe you still have to do social distancing, but you want to accommodate people getting together in safe settings. And then also getting your team involved with what's working and what's not. So as you're mapping your experience across all channels and you're figuring out your engagement streams and your revenue streams to have coverage in all those channels, also get your team involved to understand where the waste is. So before you start saying, okay, we need to build out here, we need to shut this down, or we have too many people over here and we're gonna have to eliminate headcount, start looking at redundancies or start looking at massive gaps. So when you start architecting the intersections of the experience in all these channels, you'll find you have extra in one department and a need in the other department. And this is the greatest opportunity to start thinking rationally and not in bureaucracy, and say, well, can we just make a shift? Can we do a lift and shift to solve this resource problem? If you had in-person, if you think about like a banking client of mine, they have in-person tellers. Well, they don't need in-person tellers, so now they're training them how to use the phones. If you think about your home, you might have a ton of boxes in the basement, but you have a disorganized closet upstairs. Well, take those extra boxes and move them upstairs. So as you start to look at your revenue streams and architecting your intersections, you'll identify gaps that you can either fill or that you're going to roadmap for the future. But it's really important that you do the work for your business on how things work in different channels and how information and people work together. And it isn't just something that you do as a leadership team. Really involve your entire team in the architecture of your business. And that's how you drive that employee engagement. And that's how you solve a lot of customer experience problems. Number 4 is becoming a journalist. Take everything that we talked about. Now, if you were a journalist, you would report on that. So get comfortable knowing that even the littlest stories of success or human interest or power are things that your customers and clients and stakeholders want to hear about. 500-word story from an employee of how getting on that team call lifts up their day. That's a better marketing piece than anything that you could create. Being able to share that on social media or share that in an email to your stakeholders. A video from one of your fellows or from a client or a stakeholder that you help. That's more powerful than any kind of 5-page case study or extra page on your website. Talking about how you're doing work and bringing your employees into the process of managing a company for the future is incredibly inspiring, and it's humanizing. And if I get the choice of who I want to work with as a consumer, regardless of the type of company or experience, I want to invest, and we'll see this in the future. People are going to be investing on that. People invest in companies that invest in their people. People invest in companies that invest in their people. A happy employee is better than $1 million worth of marketing ads, because that happy employee that's empowered to share their experience and be a part of it is going to, and they're going to be the face of your brand, because that's your company's soul. It's your employees and your teams. So become a journalist. Share those stories. Don't worry about production value. No one expects you to have a production studio. Get lean. And the other thing about journalists, they work on deadlines. You got to get the paper out. You have to fill that time in the news story. So get that content, fill it in, and go. It's never going to be perfect. Not everyone's going to like it, but get worth speed, make it quick and short, and get it out there, and start really sharing the faces and the stories of your employees and your experience. And that's going to be incredible marketing for your customers. The fifth of the six, using intrinsic motivators. So we'll share this when we send it out, but extrinsic motivators are raises and awards. Intrinsic motivators drive sustainable behavior change. So if someone is really driven by innovation or learning or having ownership of a project or being altruistic, understanding and tapping into what motivates your employees statistically and scientifically drives greater retention and productivity than just awards or one type of motivator behavior. And so if we want to personalize our business for our stakeholders, personalize your business for what drives your employees, and focus on intrinsic motivators, because those are actually proven to show long-term growth. And finally, redefine what innovation means for your company. Everyone is an innovator now. Any type of employee, whether they've been there for a month and they work in the call center, or they're the executive director, every single person is title plus innovator. And so if they have an idea that's creative or thoughtful, it is their right and duty to bring it to the team to think about. You know, innovation doesn't live in one department. Innovation is not an innovation group. Innovation isn't a seminar. It's part of your day. And so building in time for your teams to think creatively and be innovative, and creating that feedback loop for managers to receive it, and that language to say we're all innovators, is a game changer. And that's what's actually going to drive growth for companies, because your customers have innovations that are coming to you, your employees are listening to it, and everyone wants to feel like they're contributing to the whole. As human beings, we're actually designed to be creative and innovative and change and adapt. That is what we're built to do. Yes, we have anxiety, which keeps us alive and helps us benchmark those creative ambitions, but we're actually designed for growth. And so really leaning into the human experience to drive growth is about remembering that your company has a soul, and your soul lives with your employees and their productivity. And that's what's going to connect with customers, because people just want to connect with people. And the behaviors that you use to do that include technology and social media and email and automating that. It doesn't replace it, and it's not more important than the people that you work with. So that's what I had to share. Randy, I don't know if you've gotten any questions, and we'll share this out afterwards, but those are my 6 tips to harnessing your humanity to drive growth, especially as we're all remote.
Yeah, no, that's great. Jeannie posted a comment, not a question, that she's excited to be able to share these materials with her board of directors. So, so everybody, yeah, these materials will be coming, and the video will be up eventually on acnconsult.org, as well as the YouTube channel. I have one question, Kim. I love the idea of planning war games. If we can go back to that for a second, if I wanted to start that today, what is the very first thing that I should do to tackle that, what seems like a pretty daunting thing, to think through that? If I just wanted to start it, how would I do that?
Yeah, so this is the way that I do it. And it takes a little bit of time, because you essentially want to get to like worst case scenario planning. And for some reason, we're built to like hedge against that, right? Like we always put up these barriers. So there's something that I use in coaching called fear setting. It's like goal setting, but it's like, I like look for the monster under the bed. I'm really anxious today. Why? Because I might lose my job. Well, why would you lose your job? Because they can't afford my salary, because I can't get that loan, because all the banks have failed. You know what I mean? Like, go down that path and then you'll get to that, like, because, you know, all the borders are shut down and half of our staff is actually, you know, transient immigrants. Okay. Good. Start there. Like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
You know, and kind of pick those crazy worst case scenarios. And so I think exercise one is everyone kind of goes through their fear setting and put those on the table and play through them. And then people will get more and more comfortable getting a little bit more outlandish, and that you can't see my air quotes, outlandish. But you know what's outlandish is a global pandemic that shuts down every country for over 2 months. So like, I would say if it's not outlandish, you're probably not close to the realm of possibility.
Right. We have time for one more question that I want to get to. What tips, this is from Lydia, what tips do you have for inspiring your team to be innovators, especially if some are more introverted or prefer not to share in groups?
That's a really good question, Lydia. So I have a matrix that I'll share out with Randy, and we'll make sure you get it. First, it's realizing that innovation can be big and highly impactful, like inventing the iPhone, or it can be small and iterative, like developing a way to run your Excel macro in half the time. And so it's redefining yourself. If I think that my idea is just my idea, I'm less likely to share it. If I'm seen and give myself the title of an innovator, by default, and it goes into like psychology, I'm more likely to think my idea is worth sharing. I think to your point about introverts and extroverts, yes, it's having a variety of channels and coaching managers to identify someone's work and say, well, that's really innovative. How can we share that with the group in a way that you think you're comfortable with? Someone might not want to get on a group call and share it, but they might say, can you share it out, manager, for me and give me a call out? I think one is just creating that identity and that title and saying, you are all now innovators, call yourself that and get used to it. Bringing that lexicon into conversations at the front line and the management level. And it does involve training. And absolutely, you can talk to me about that afterwards. We have a training program that's really affordable that people can use. And realizing that it can be something small and iterative and big ideas. It's all innovative. And you're going to have more little ideas than big ideas just by nature of scale.
Great. That's awesome. Kim, thank you so much. This was so much information that you packed in, and it was all extremely helpful. So thank you. And I look forward to the materials that we'll be able to share with everybody. I do want to show everybody the upcoming events that we have. We do have a couple more flash webinars coming. These are, you know, these quick sessions that we're doing. The next one's going to be on April 29th, content marketing tips for right now. Before that, on April 28th, we're teaming up with Forefront to do the Ask a Consultant series. This one is going to be the new world of funding. This is the opportunity for Forefront and our nonprofit partners and friends to take advantage of the expertise of all of our ACN members. And so they can ask anything that might be pressing on their minds as nonprofit leaders right now. And so I think a big one is to start with funding. May 6th is actually, we're not able to do that connecting for coffee with Forefront right now. We'll do that later on. But right now, you know, we don't want to take up more time from our nonprofit friends, knowing that they have a lot on their plate already. June 16th is the ACN annual meeting for the first time ever. It will be online. And that's the opportunity that we all have to talk about the direction of our association and where we want to go. It'll also be a pretty cool opportunity to do some networking within Zoom, and we're excited for that as well. So all of those events, you can find them on the website. Also make sure you're following on all the social media channels because Lydia and the marketing committee get that information out pretty well And don't forget, if you're an ACN member, you have exclusive access to the Facebook ACN members group, which is a great resource right now. A lot of people sharing good information and asking questions and connecting. So thank you again, Kim. Thank you, everybody who helped get this together. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you at our next event, April 28th and 29th.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Have a great day.